Gosh, what a streaming service we have here. Every single day. Music, talk, the best for what you need to hear for making your day the best that you can make it. So let's start off with our mindset moment. And I also need to tell you that I was just extremely frustrated last week when I gave you the worst performance I think I've ever had. I was trying to do something remote using Zoom and then going through Facebook Live, and I just didn't have my full capacity of understanding of that connection. But today we're going to make it up to you. Today we're going to talk about recovery and renewal, because part of my cloud that I had on me last week was I was a little bit under the weather. I was less than a week away from my surgery. I'm now a little bit two weeks plus from the surgery on my left knee, which was kind of the creative impetus behind my creating the show today. So we'll get to the specifics of that in just a moment, but let me share with you our mindset moment. You know, time heals all until you are the one that needs the time. So recovery from injury and change depends on the physical and emotional foundation you start with. Basically preparation. How well are you prepared to deal with change, be it physical or emotional change? In my case, I had a little bit of both. Had some surgery on my left knee to repair the root medial meniscus, and that created an emotional change as well. Look, I wasn't ready for it. I've been on crutches before. I've had injuries to my legs before, but I didn't expect it. It came way out of the blue, and that caused me to have to rethink a few things. And crutches was one of them, because this particular injury, there is no weight bearing on that left leg for 6 weeks. So I have to be very, very conscientious of my hip hopping with my, not a musical reference to hip hop, when I hip hop with my crutches, because I've got to make sure I shift all my weight to the right, no weight on the left. That takes a very deliberate and slow pace to make that happen. So I decided that my quote was the mindset moment for this week, as it was for last week, and maybe for the next 4 weeks, because I've got 4 weeks plus of taking care of no weight bearing on that left side. Yeah, that's the reality. Put yourself in that position and see what you think. And some of you are probably very familiar with injury and recovery and making the necessary steps to not only recover from the surgery, but then once that's done, getting into that renewal process, which includes things like physical therapy. It includes things like strength building. Once you, like for me, and once I get off the crutches and I can bear weight on that leg, it's going to be a little bit of shock to bear weight. It will have healed, but I'm going to have some soreness and some stiffness there. I do now. I'm doing some isometric exercises to engage the quad, keep it as vital and as vibrant as possible during those 6 weeks of no weight bearing on that leg. But I would challenge anybody to disagree with me about these processes of recovery and renewal are both physical and emotional changes. You have all kinds of situations that people find themselves in. Some of the extremes are people in wheelchairs, or those little scooters that you can put one leg on and scoot around. Well, I wasn't given that option because of the non-weight bearing situation for my knee. Crutches was my alternative. I guess the extreme alternative would be very limited movement, be on a couch, be in a bed. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. But sometimes when you go from that recovery to the components of renewal, which would include the strength building, stabilization of the leg once I can bear weight on my leg, to get that done. And there's lots of different positions that the mind takes when you're in that process. You're trying to get through it. And typically I deal with the appendages, a wrist, an elbow, a shoulder, a knee, an ankle, a hip. Those are the things that I usually see outside of me. It's not me that's going through it. In this case, it's me. I have a very fresh frame of reference to share with you about the recovery and renew process, both a physical and emotional scenario. So I'm going to share with you, though, this morning a bit of a piece of sound from some of my favorite movies. But this sets up an attitude about getting you started, a foundational attitude to get you started. So let me give you just a shot of this. Hopefully it'll run for me. It doesn't seem to be. Maybe it is and maybe it isn't. See if I can get the volume up. Well, what I was going to give you was a sound bite from the movie Rocky about getting knocked down. And metaphorically, I've been knocked down a little bit. I've been diminished, as my family around me tells me. I'm in diminished capacity. Now I could walk away, crutch away, and just kind of, you know, not whine, but just kind of feel sorry for myself and wonder about, you know, how fast should I respond? How resilient should I be to this change? Well, when it comes to the physical body and getting it repaired, if you really want to be repaired and come through that recovery, you've got to have a mindset that doesn't shy away from aggressively taking the steps with your attitude to push through the discomfort, follow the instructions, do what you're told in the injury. Now, I'm familiar with that from a year ago, a little more than a year ago, when I had my rotator cuffs on my left shoulder. I guess one might think my left side is kind of problematic, isn't it? Everything seems to land on my left side. But my shoulder injury was, as I've said, a gold medal, without tongue-in-cheek on this case. It was a gold medal effort. It was thorough and severe in that thoroughness, as did my surgeon, Dr. Armando Vidal has pointed out. In my journeys to the Stedman Clinic, I'm becoming a very familiar face, since the frequency with my visits aren't all that long compared to most patients. I've been warned not to try to curb my activities. That will be hard for me to do. I like physical activity. I like being active and moving. But I'm gonna listen, because the injury in this case wasn't as severe. It's part of it's an injury that occurred because of just the wear and tear I put on my body. And at the age I'm at, the activities I'm still at, it could happen, and it did happen. That root medial meniscus is a degenerative situation. The meniscuses of your body, in this case your knee, is taking a constant pounding. Now, what was nice is I've got good tissue there, good spacing between the bones, which is what that meniscus shores up. So they anchored it back, tied it off where it needed to be secured, and as long as I do what I'm told, I should be able to get to a status of that renewal process. As with my shoulder, the renewal process was paying attention during that recovery about the position of my arm, how I slept, doing some ice water therapy on it. Oh gosh, wonderful systems, those ice water therapy systems. And really doing post-injury in the surgery, making sure that I am disciplined and really stalwart in my attitude about the recovery process. So I allow my body the chance to heal without obstruction, without any obstacles to it. Now in this case with my knee, the obstacle would be bearing weight on that leg and causing possibly the sutures that have been tied off inside on my knee to those anchors, give a chance to really anchor up and really generate the connections they need to connect. So it's not easy. That attitude, that mindset you need to really click on is part of what you did when you were a competitor, when you are a competitor. Just shift the reference and influence of the focus to the recovery process of your body. It's not the same as lifting weights. It's not the same as going out there and executing the skill sets that you used to execute as an athlete, as a competitor. But that attention during that time frame will allow you to get to that renewal part. I want to, in the first part of September, I don't want the crutches anymore. But not having the crutches will be the symbol that the doctor said you're doing good. You can bear weight on that now. You can start amping up your routines, the exercises, maybe the load and resistance to the movement so that you can strengthen it, begin a slow process of strengthening it. Now, I'm sure I'm going to still have some cautions because that's just what the doctors do with me. Dr. Vidal knows me well enough to know that I will push the limits. I will make sure that I am constantly looking beyond where I'm currently standing so I can get an idea of where I have to go. For me, pushing limits is a barometer about what is necessary or what is not necessary. You know, what to back off. You know, went too far. Okay, back it off a little bit. Not all doctors look at it the same way I do during that renewal process. But there are some questions during this whole setup, from injury to recovery to the renewal process, that I ask myself, and I want you to consider. Here's one of them. What is the process during your recovery? What are you going to do? Well, you should rely on your physician and their physical therapy specialist to tell you or give you an agenda of how to carry that forward. As you may know, for any of you who have suffered injuries in the past, your surgical group may already have a PT center of their own. If they don't, or if they do but you want to use your own, instructions. You're going to need instructions on how to process through that recovery process. Here's one more opportunity for you to stay diligent and deal with that agenda and secure it in the best way you can so that your execution of it is completely understood by you. Because if it's not, if you don't ask questions, it's going to be hard for you to execute what's on the piece of paper or to participate with the physical therapist. So become part of that process. Understand that process. Now, as I say that, I have to tell you transparently, I'm not very good at it sometimes. You know, meaning I think I know it, but things change. Different aspects of therapy are modified or adjusted as therapists learn more about the body, the human body, and I need to be more diligent in my listening. I do listen, but I'm not always, when it comes to me personally, as thorough. I hesitate to say empathetic because it's not about empathy towards anybody else. It's about me. So I have to listen with the intent to understand more deeply what they're saying for me to do. And if I don't understand it, ask a question. Now I'm referencing me, but I'm asking you to think the same way, because I'm not the only hardhead out there. I'm not the only competitor who thinks that my way is the best way. And yet I know when I coach athletes and I teach the concepts of diligence and resiliency, it takes courage to remove yourself from the equation and take in everything you can so you truly understand the process and in that recovery modality. Now, there's a couple other questions that I want you to think about. It's not just about what you read as far as the agenda for the process of recovery. It's also, what does it look like? The execution, like for example, I've got these straight leg presses to get my quad engaged, and there's a little towel that goes underneath your knee. And I thought, well, God, that's probably for comfort, right? Well, I stopped myself, I took a breath, I decided to ask rather than think I'm the know-it-all. I said, why do I have a towel underneath my knee? Well, that towel creates a barrier, a resistance to the knee. When you try to tighten the quad, the knee goes down and could lock into place, which is not a bad thing. But what we want ultimately is for you to feel the quad engaging. So with that obstacle, that resistance of that towel underneath the knee, it doesn't allow it to go down. So it engages full length of the quad from top of knee all the way up to your hip. And that's a fuller engagement of that quad. Didn't think about that. But that's, what does it look like? What does it look like? So when you're renewing, when you get through the recovery, or get into the recovery and you understand the agendas from the physical therapist, and you want to continue your renewal process, don't forget what those exercises look like and feel like, so that you can execute them in ways that's going to optimize your ability not only to recover, but to continue the process of renewal once you're getting to those levels of strength and flexibility that are equal to or greater than what it was before you had the surgery. Well, during all these processes, both in the injury process with the surgery, there's processes there. Those go by very quickly. A couple days and you're done. You get rid of the medications. You're just kind of dealing with the tightness and the soreness a little bit. But then there's that recovery, which is a much longer process. And in my case, I'll continue to bitch about them. The crutches, not a fan of the crutches, because it's a forced discipline for me to slow down, which is okay. I need to slow down every once in a while so that I'm focusing on the execution of the tasks that I do. And that's where I then lead into the challenges with this process. The process of recovery and renewal probably has the greatest concentration of challenges. I mentioned one for me, which is crutches. Slowing my pace down, being conscientious of, when you're going up the stairs, the good leg goes up first, set a foundation, then bring up the bad leg. If you're going down the stairs, set the bad leg down first, get it anchored and properly covered, and then bring down the good leg. Remembering that process, and then doing it slowly to execute it. Because no matter what age you are or what level of strength and capability you are, there's going to be a certain degree of instability. Because that one side, for me in particular, because of the no weight bearing condition, you've got to be aware of that, and it's going to create some wobbling. So being cautious around stairs is a big deal. That's a huge challenge. The other challenge is the emotional preparation at the start of every day. I think if you've listened to the show at all here at 360 Performance, I think you'll agree there's a consistency we have about starting every day with yourself in mind, because your preparation of you will help you be prepared to support others. But until you support you and do the best for you to get your foundation in place, it's going to be a struggle to support or identify even anybody that could utilize your help. So start every day is a challenge when you've got the discomfort, the lack of mobility, the lack of stability that you're familiar with. So take a moment, take a little bit longer at the end of the bed before you snap right up, grab your crutch, and hobble off to the bathroom. It's something to be aware of. And look, it takes courage. It's going to be a humbling experience when you do this. Now, let me pause a minute and talk about this process without an injury. Look, I'm using an injury, one, because I've got one myself, but I also deal with a lot of people that face that as competitors. But then there's people that can benefit, any of you out there can benefit from the same thinking of processes of going from an injury to recovery to renewal in a way that is beneficial to you, but you're not necessarily an athlete. You're still a competitor perhaps, but let's say, here's the example. Your injury is not a shoulder surgery. Your injury could be somebody, they fired you, they let you go. Or they didn't let you go, but you're having difficulty finding employment. Maybe you're a college student. It's not literally an injury, but it feels the same. It's a hurt. It's an obstacle to you, for you to be able to do what you normally do at the pace and thought process that you normally would move at. It could cause an emotional change for you. You could get a little bit frustrated, maybe angry. The other side is you get depressed, frustrated. So there's lots of things that can simulate metaphorically an injury state. And the recovery will be a little different. You're not going to have an apparatus like a huge brace from your hip to your ankle on, or wear a sling, that isolates your arm, or a wheelchair or a rolly cart or whatever it might be. But you do have signs and symbols that represent you need some recovery. You need some time for you to get into a process of recovery. Finding things and people that you can surround yourself with that reinforce the best of who you are. Thereby not allowing you to wallow and to anguish in a place and a space that is going to be detrimental, diminish your character, diminish your capacity, as I've been told. On the physical side of injuries, it's much easier to identify when your capacity has been diminished. It's extremely easy to figure that out. I'm sorry, I'm making a minor adjustment. So those are a couple of questions that I want to make sure you really understand. Do you have a process for your recovery? What does your renewal look like when you're going through each day? Do you identify those moments when you're in a good place, and also being able to understand when you are in a good place to continue to move forward, and identify the challenges that you're going to face. That's very, very important for you to be able to anticipate that. And I'm going to tell you this, the processes you put in place, once you go through that injury moment, if it needs surgery, then you got surgery along with that injury moment, and then you get into recovery and strive towards renewal, you will be able to, because of those processes, you will be able to identify what those obstacles are for you and those challenges and how they will better you. So with that being said, let's just take a brief thought of reflection, if you will, and consider what this whole process requires to begin the renewal, or get to the renewal, because recovery is a big part of the healing. We can substitute the word healing for recovery if we need to. One of those things that I have utilized is ice therapy. Now I've got one brand, I don't remember the brand that I'm using right now, but there's all kinds of, Cool Man is a brand that's out there. They all pretty much have the same reservoir of water that you pile ice into, and then that water's quickly cooled, and then you pump it through this device that recirculates it through, and you wrap this device around your knee or your shoulder or your ankle or whatever the body part that's been wounded, whether it's because of surgery or just an injury that has swelling in it. These devices are awesome. They really improve the quality of my time during the healing process and my recovery, as well as enhancing the healing of the wound site itself. It's amazingly efficient. I'm grateful for the friends I have that already had a machine like this, the ice therapy machine. The other part of this is you've got the movement part. Now, again, I said to you, I'm not very good at this. I fight it, but I know how important it is. The crutches, all the devices, a boot on your foot if you've got an ankle or lower leg injury. For me, it's a brace from my ankle, from my hip down to my ankle. It allows me to bend it if I need to. And those devices are extremely important to have with you. Make sure you understand how they operate, how they work. For example, when I got the crutches, they were already fitted for me, but I was asleep when they did that. So when you first put them on, if the attending nurses don't ask you about how they fit, let them know if they don't fit well. Let them know so they can adjust a little bit. Because everybody's just a little bit different. I mean, the crutches have little marking places on them about height, but that doesn't mean that some people like the crutches way up in their armpits, some people like them a little lower. Make sure you share with those nurses and those medical professionals what works for you. It's important to do that. And the reason it's important is because you want to move. You got to get up and move. I want to get up and move before they want me to get up and move sometimes. That's just who I am. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own degree of emphasis in these areas. But you've got great machines like the ice therapy machines, the crutches that allow you to move. And then when you get to the process of between recovery and renewal, you're going to be interjecting a physical therapy process. And listening and watching, listening to the therapist, watching what your body does when you try to get your brain to engage your quads and squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And you're going, whoa, it doesn't move much at all. Well, expect some of that. And don't have too high of expectation about the response of muscle and tissue when you're less than a month out of surgery. I'm just right at, I think, 2.5 weeks, a little bit. So listen very carefully to your therapist and the medical professionals. Now, as I say that, I also want to be mindful of this. You're still the patient. You're still the person of concern. The focus is around you in those moments of therapy, medical examination, so you deserve to ask questions. Make sure you ask questions. Now, as I say that, I'm presuming that everybody has the same level of understanding that I do. Not the case, right? So if you need an advocate, you need another pair of ears, bring a friend, bring a colleague, bring another athlete, maybe a teammate who's gone through it before, and have them listen to your interaction with the therapist and the physicians. Now, I'm presuming with these remarks that you are of age, you're 18 years old or older, a young adult. If you're a high school student, I'm going to guess mom or dad are going to go with you, maybe both. But the point is, have somebody who has a frame of reference that has familiarity with these recovery renewal processes that they've gone through before. Maybe they've had a knee injury before. Maybe they've had a shoulder injury before. That can be very helpful insight for you to have at any of your appointments. My point, though, for you is ask questions. You are the person that's of importance. It's all about you. Now, as I just said that, you got to do what you're told. Once you've got your questions answered, you've still got your agenda in front of you about the process of going through that recovery and that renewal, do what you're told. Now, that again, there's a dialogue here. It's not a one-sided street. So as you do what you're told, you're going through the agenda, and you try to practice what is said on the agenda, and you go, man, it just doesn't seem like it's working for me. That's the kind of thing to share. Make sure you tell your therapist, hey, I was doing these at home between our visits. It didn't quite click for me, or I didn't think it clicked for me. Would you please help me understand what, if anything, that I'm missing? Once again, ask a question. Share information. Just because you're a competitive athlete or an executive of a big company doesn't mean you know everything. Oh boy, love to have a little sip of water during the show. It's, Colorado in the summertime, the humidity's down, so it dries out in a hurry. I'm just glad I'm here during the week so that the utilities are on, the fans are going. It would be a hot box in here if you had to do a show on the weekend, because things kind of get shut down on the weekends. So do what you're told. That's what we're talking about, as I shared with you my little brief break of refreshment and hydration. And within that scenario of doing what you're told, I'm not asking you to sacrifice your attitude and your understanding of who you are. Share that. But add in those moments where you humble yourself in a way that's going to get the best for you by asking questions. But then when that happens and you get answers, be aware through your listening of how it fits. Did you get the full answer that you needed? Does it fit with the scenario that you explained to them? Like with me, sometimes I explain things and people look at me sideways, and they don't ask me questions. I didn't get that. Could you repeat that again? So make sure that your awareness of how they're listening to you when you speak is high, and that you can give them some feedback. But also when they speak, make sure that your listening skills, your level of empathy, your level of desire to get to the end in mind is heightened, so that you can truly get good information through that awareness and listening process. Man, I'm getting tired just thinking about all the stuff I go through with the processes of renewal and recovery. But remember, I did it recovery and renewal. I believe it should be said that way because from a timeline, you're recovering after that injury, that surgical process or that fix the injury. Now we're going to go into recovery, and then with recovery, we amp it up, level up again to the renewal process. I think that's a better way of looking at that recovery renewal timeline and footprint. So it's always interesting to me, especially this time of year, because we've got college football teams all over the nation they've started their programs, getting ready for the season. We've got NFL football exhibition games. The Broncos will be playing tomorrow against the Dallas Cowboys. It should be a very interesting dance, and I say it that way because all the people that the fans want to see play are going to play a lot. Like Russell Wilson's probably not going to play a lot. He's going to go out. I'm hoping he does more than one series of downs. I hope he does a couple of series because I'd like to see that repetitive nature of his effort with a group of offensive linemen, receivers, running backs, go against the #1 defense of Dallas. You know, in practices, we call it ones against ones, ones against twos, twos against ones. It's something that really will give us an idea of how well acclimated are these players, some of which who have never known each other other than reputation, have never played with each other, don't know each other very well. This whole preseason camp was both an emotional and physical effort, not only by the Broncos, but by every NFL football team out there, every college football team at every level, from Division I down to Division III. They're all going through that process. I'm having the honor of working with Colorado Mesa Mustangs and some of their players. A lot of great things going on there, one of which is their coaching staff. Some just great experiences with guys like Trevor is out there. We got Crockett is out there. Who else is on that? Oh, Miles, Kochevar, the head coach. All of these guys I've known for a number of years. Trevor Wickery, seasoned football coach, but also seasoned football player. He's just one of those great guys that any mom or dad or husband or wife, depending on the pro level, but at college level, any mom or dad would love to have their son coached by Coach Wickery. It's just, they've got a good core of folks there. So in our moment of reflecting right now, make sure that you find a place when you reflect, even if the issues are tough and challenging to think about. Find an environment that's going to be conducive to, kind of leveling out the emotions, helping you work through those attitudes. Like my favorite sign from the Kona Inn. It's sunset at the Kona Inn right here at 11:40-ish in the morning in Colorado. It's just such a serene setting with the palm trees, the fluffy white clouds with the amber and yellow sunset across the Pacific Ocean. So give yourself those moments when you're thinking about, like many of the coaches at the college level are thinking about, oh my gosh, are we going to get through another day? It's arduous to get through all these scenarios. And we've got 130 plus kids that eventually we're going to have to whittle it down to define who's going to be on the playing roster, to set up our progressions of first level, second level, third level on the roster and the depth chart, because not everybody's going to make the active squad. Those who don't will more than likely find a role in a practice squad role, not too dissimilar to what happens in the pros. They all have limits as well, much smaller limits, but nonetheless they have limits. I believe it's going to be a very interesting season because the energy that was cooped up because of the pandemic is still sitting inside a lot of players. They were not fully satisfied. And then you add the energy of rookies, which in many cases, not only the energy of rookies, but the talent of rookies is good enough to compete for a position in the depth chart. And in some cases, at #1. So it's going to be a very interesting camp through the rest of the month of August. But I think if you've watched the news at all, much of the expectations of processes on recovering from the off season and renewing yourself. Once you get on the full-time starting squad and depth chart of 1 to 3, you will see some really great things happening. Some really great things. So a little bit of that reflection. Let's move to some specific things that you can do when you're faced with an injury, be it physical or emotional, or perhaps when you have a physical, it's both. You've got some emotional change as well. What are some process steps that you can put into place so that you raise your mindfulness up to be able to deal with the things you're going to have to prepare through those recovery processes, going into the renewal process, hopefully getting you at or beyond is my choice, go beyond the condition of performance capability that you were at before the injury. Well, like many things we talk about in delivering high performance efforts, is visioning. Envision what it is. I mentioned a minute ago about looking at your recovery and renewal process and what does it look like? What does the snap of the quad look like in the injured leg versus the non-injured leg? So you get an idea of how hard to squeeze it to get it where you want it, right? So that's a vision, a simple example of a vision. The other thing is the vision of, imagining yourself going down the stairs. Remember, down the stairs, it's the good leg first, then the bad leg, and then going up reverse that. A little Willy Wonka moment there. Going down the stairs, it's the bad leg first, then the good leg. Going up the stairs, it's the good leg first, set a foundation, and then the bad leg. And don't forget the vision and the feeling of where are the crutches. Man, I can't tell you how many times I've stubbed the nose of my crutch on a rug, or just didn't pick it up high enough and it drags across the concrete or the asphalt. Not a good feeling. A little bit of apprehension and fear rushes through my body. So get a vision before you move. Yeah, I know it's going to be slower. I get it. I've been there. I've felt it as of just a few minutes ago as I came in here. The first time in years I've had to use the elevator here at the studio. Not exactly something I want to repeat often. I want to get through the recovery. So the next step in the process, think about, well, how can you not, right? With an injury, I got to walk. I'm going to practice the vision of using my crutches. But in that practice, and you've got that vision, make sure you're emphasizing for yourself the key parts of those steps of the process. For me, is pick the crutch up. Don't let it stuff itself on a rug or the hardwood floor or whatever it might be. Take your time, because remember, practice, I learned this a lot of years ago, thankfully, that practice doesn't have to go fast. What practice needs to do is execute to the level of mastery. And sometimes the steps of the execution of a skill has to be slow for you to master it, so you really, really feel it. You understand what's going on. Like, for example, I had to make sure I felt what my leg looked like. It's puffy, there's some fluid in there, and every time I put the brace on, it relieved little dents and patterns of the brace. And I got a little bit freaked about that because I thought it was there for too long. Well, went to my visit with my physician's assistant, Stacy, and she said, no, that's common. Now, it's greatly reduced, but initially I didn't even remember that existed in my prior situations with injuries. So practicing a vision that's based on facts, factual visions that are based on what the experts have told you, your experience as well, but some visions are influenced by unknowns that you haven't seen before, and then that unknown gets kind of stuck in your head, kind of flips you around and twirls you out. Make sure that your visions are based on the professionals giving you the insights, the practice that you've gone through, so you've got real-time experiences with generating that vision, so that the next time you practice, not only do you know what the steps are precisely, but you also know how to adjust and adapt practice before to make it even better. Leveling up, not leveling on. So another key piece in the breathing in the process of being aware and moving your vision forward is during the practice, make sure you're breathing. Sitting any length of time for me in a chair, because my leg is bent, is going to cause a little bit more swelling to happen and a little bit more stiffness to be part of my leg, and I've got to be aware of that. Part of my awareness is the fact that I breathe. If I wasn't aware, I wouldn't take a breath and help me cleanse through that discomfort, bring more oxygen into my system. Remember, oxygen is a great way to bring healing process to your blood. O2 is necessary for blood not only to flow to the right places, but also to be available for repair, for heightened awareness, more oxygen to your brain. You're going to be sharper, you're going to think better. So breathing has a lot of merit within the processes we're talking about today when you want to recover. And the breathing process is a big part of that recovery. Now, I'm not going to diminish the fact you're going to eat, got to have food, fuel yourself, because when you bring in oxygen, what does the burning of something require? It needs O2. It needs oxygen. So bringing in oxygen, taking your time when you eat, making sure you have a nice even pace, not like the Marines, where they're shoveling it in and barely breathing at all during the process of them shoveling down their food. Well, you're not in that desperate drill camp scenario. You're in control of it. So use your breathing to benefit your healing process and give you those moments to think through things so that the visions that you create are accurate and representative of the steps and methods you have to apply. This is an area, boy, I tell you, this next point on the process to think about is extremely humbling. It's in the recovery and renewal process, it's where you really get reminded about how mindful you need to be and how humble in your mindfulness you should be required to do, because it's going to help you. And that point is accepting failure. You're going to goof up. Just another pause of hydration. Yeah, accepting failure and the reality that there's going to be errors, little slip-ups. I'll give you an example, coming back to the crutches again. I make these noises like it sounds like I'm angry, right? When I stub my crutch, or it's not quite stable when I lift it up from one stair to the next, and I falter a little bit. The good thing is I don't falter so much I fall down. But accepting the failure in that moment is critical. It's extremely important for you to accept it so you move beyond it and continue to grow, continue to exercise, and repeat your vision, the practice of that vision, breathing through that vision and that practice so that you're properly fueling what's going on, as well as maintaining your mindfulness within the process. Because when failure comes, you can readily and quickly accept it. The quicker you accept failure, the quicker you get back to where you were before. That's resiliency. That's a description of a resilient behavior. All right, little failure right there. Okay, got it, adjusted. Breathe, crutch. I just went through a verbally descriptive vision for you. And as I did that, I also gave you example of fix it, the failure, the error, adjust in that fixing it, and then repeat. You're going to go to the next step and the next step. And then you're going to sit down and do some water therapy, and then you're going to get up and do it again. Be aware. Accept the failure. Create a vision that allows you to practice at a level that's going to improve you, and continue to test your courage and your humility. It's a given. Absolutely a given. It's always wonderful for me and surprising how much more I gain when I just take a moment. And yet, in my DNA, I want to go fast. And I'm trying more and more every day to be better at pacing myself in a way that I maximize the level of understanding, awareness, and results. And that happens by having a really good vision of what and who I am. That to me is the simplest definition of mindfulness. It starts with me. It starts with me acknowledging that I am present to do the things necessary through my recovery process to get to renewal and then continue with that renewal. Like I still do all my stuff with my shoulder. Because I don't want it to go backwards. I want the renewal process to be one that really reaffirms how good that shoulder has healed. And the same thing I'm going to do with my knee. It doesn't mean I'm always good at it every moment. I still have my moments where I have to fix it and repeat. I'm going to give you a reference. There's a website that I want you to check out. It's Steadman Clinic. That's www.the, T-H-E, Steadman spelled S-T-E-A-D-M-A-N, clinic, thesteadmanclinic.com. Check them out. I tell you what, the reason I want you to check them out is because, God forbid, you should have an injury, okay? But if you do, the Steadman Clinic is not just good as surgeons, as physicians, in literally putting you back together, but their teams and their process of addressing your needs are something that I rarely see. But what's really interesting and dynamic for me is the consistency with which they deliver. And understand, they're dealing with high-level physical performance competitors, the Olympic level, Super Bowl level, NHL level, cyclists. I mean, the highest level of athletes, every kind of athlete. So they are constantly delivering the highest level of performance every single day. My hat goes off to them. I thank them because they do it with a smile. That means they've got to love what they do, and yet they're not exempt from being tired or frustrated or agitated, but they continue to deliver the best of the best. That's the Steadman Clinic, thesteadmanclinic.com. Check them out. If you need something or you have a friend that needs something, check them out. Their main locations are in Vail, Colorado, but they have facilities in and around the Denver metro area because they support many of the professional sports teams in the Denver metro area, if not all of them, actually. My surgeon is Dr. Armando Vidal. Armando's wife, Leslie, is also at the Steadman Clinic. They are both just super human beings. I can't say enough about them. So, with that being said, let's talk a little bit about what other athletes think about the recovery, renewal process, the getting back from injury. Here's a quote for you. You can't control injuries. You really can't. But you can control how hard you work to come back. That's recovery and renewal. And speaking of come back, that's Brittany Griner's quote. I hope she comes back soon. I would love to trust impeccably, without hesitation, the comments of our statesmen about getting Brittany back. But history has told us to be a bit cautious in how quickly we believe everything they say. But Brittany's quote, once again, is, you can't control injury. You just can't. But you can control how hard you work to come back. She's a worker, Brittany Griner. Now, with that being said, and I totally agree with what Brittany has to say about that. And as I remember it, she's gone through some recovery and renewal in her career as a college basketball player and a professional basketball player. And the consequences of your competition are not just about winning. You, as a competitor, need to be aware that the preparation you put in to be aware of winning and losing will help you when, I don't want it for anybody. I want you to be injury-free. But that's not the reality of high competitive people. We have our hair on fire. We go forward quickly and with strength and not with any reservation, especially if you've experienced championship outcomes. So with those kinds of skill sets and how you prepare for being a competitor and being that champion, it also prepares you to renew and recover. Here's what I've discovered. In many cases, my colleagues do not share with the athletes the foundation they created as a competitor, how it can be used to help them get through the injury, the recovery, and the renewal of that injury. But that's important to put in your mindset so that you continue to work really hard at freely, without any hesitation, getting after every skill that you've mastered and delivering it, knowing that the consequences of you competing are not just about winning and losing, but they're also about how you can renew and recover in the unlikely event that you're going to be injured. It's a mindset. That mindset helps everyone get through what is necessary in dealing with recovery and renewal processes. And if you can remember those people around you that compete to level up, they can be exemplars for you on how you can get through and past the obstacles that present themselves, whether you have an injury or not. As I mentioned earlier, this doesn't just apply to anybody who's gotten injured. Yes, I'm being very specific today about recovery and renewal as it relates to injury, but sometimes the injury can be just emotional or just physical. Now, I tend to say that a physical injury has emotions to it, because I am not thrilled on a daily basis of amping my brain up to get on those crutches. I would much rather just, hey, let me go. I've had suggestions about, hey, put on a rollerblade on that left foot. I can roll around. No, the issue is no weight bearing. I'm listening, doing what I'm told. I'm leveling up. And in doing so, I'm reminded by all the tragedies that we have experienced. God forbid you've experienced it, but if you've heard about them, witnessed them, or both, the things, the attitudes and actions that have gotten those who have suffered through all different kinds of things, be it injury or natural disasters or, God forbid, a violent tragedy in your neighborhood. Love and care for one another never ends. And it is a force, a healing nectar that can wrap itself around all of those both emotional and physical injuries that we tend to collect through our competitive journey. And even if you aren't a real true competitor at the highest level, the likelihood of you suffering is probably less than others because you don't actively go looking for it. But it's a universal truth as far as I'm concerned. Love, kindness, appreciation, all versions of the word love never ends. If it's present, when it's present, it has a very powerful healing force that allows you to level up, to come through and away from the injuries and tragedies that have consumed you and those around you. Now, that being said, I want to remind you again, every Friday we bring insights and strategies, methods to you about how to be a better performer, how to be a better you. As my daughter tells me routinely, live your best life, Dad. Live your best life. I know from experience that not everybody has been given, nor do they seek out strategies on how to live a best life. They just survive. I don't want to just survive. I want to step up. I want to bootstrap others who are struggling with finding a way to be better. So we give you this session live every Friday at 11 o'clock, but then we kind of buff it up a little bit, polish it some, and push it out into a podcast platform. I prefer Spotify, but we're also on Apple and Google and many others. You pick your favorite podcast platform that you look for insights and type in 360 Performance, 360 Performance. If it pops up with that wonderful little yellow square with our logo and my shining little face, you got the right place. Take a listen to both today's broadcast as well as those we've put in our library on any number of performance topics so that you can get yourself involved. You can't level up if you don't take action to get to the next step. Martin Luther King said, don't look too strongly at the end in mind before you take one step towards it. Know enough about where you want to go, but take the first step. Take the first step. Get involved. Be part of a process that helps you be the best that you can be in making your plans so that you can take action. You know what that first step is, and you know the path that it's on and where it could take you once you take every step within that structure of that pathway. I want to make sure we help you give definition to the pathways that make you better. But it starts with making your plans, plans that you uniquely want to participate in and that you will own. The college football programs that are starting up this month and getting ready for the season, those pro programs that are starting up this month, every one of those coaching staffs, every one of those administrative bodies and the leadership that's within there, every one of those players who really knows what it takes makes plans to take action. Without those plans, you cannot adjust to the unexpected, because the unexpected doesn't have a plan. But without a foundational plan that got you started, take that first step, you're going to have a hard time adjusting to the unknown, the unexpected. The actions of the other competitors that surprise you with their ability to deliver high performance. It's hard for you to counteract if you don't have a plan yourself. So make a plan. Take some action. Be part of a process that helps you win at being the best that you can be. And you know what? As I say that, I was thinking about it before I push the button. KUHS does that for me every Friday. They allow me to be challenged, to have support and systems here to deliver messages to you about processes that will help you be the best that you can be for you. That's streaming right here at KUHS every day, 24/7, both music and talk, delivering what is the best of those worlds. I'm Dr. Whiteman, coach to some. We give you 360 Performance every Friday, 11 a.m. I hope you have a great day. And as I close out the day, let me share with you something I missed at the beginning of the show, which we typically do, which is my gratitude. And I saved it to the end for a reason. Because with an injury, look, it's hard to accept this at any age. But I want to make sure that I try to do as much as I can. But that being said, there's some things I can't do, nor should I do, because the doctor said don't do that. So I'm grateful for the people, my family, my spouse, my partner, my friend, who has helped me do things that I normally would do, and she's doing it for me. I'm grateful for her and her effort to do that. And sometimes it's not fun for her. That's why I was doing it before this injury. So I'm even more grateful for that, because it takes a certain special attitude to work through the things that you're not comfortable doing. So I'm really grateful for that. So if you have a special someone in your life, think about what they've been doing for you that you may have not acknowledged them for, and share your gratitude to them for the effort they put out, in some cases without being asked. It just happens. Have a great day today. Enjoy every aspect of the day that you create for you. Live your best life.